Bless the Lord, O my soul, bless it.
Hi. Thanks for tuning in to Armor of God. As always, let me start the video by saying thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us, and hopefully you'll be edified with what we've put together here for you. As I've promised in my previous video, this is going to be part 2 of the video guide to exorcisms. But for this video, what I've put together for all of you here will be rather thought-provoking. While some may seem to be the exorcist's own personal opinion, but others are part of the church's teaching, only delivered in their own preferred way. Anyway, let's start this with something from Father Daniel Reehil, and dedicating this one to the skeptics and atheists in particular.
My own personal theory about people believing is that a third of the people believe whatever you tell them, a third of the people believe nothing you tell them, and a third of the people are open to listen and weigh the pros and cons and think about it. So I'm not here to convince you. You get to choose. You get one life to live, and if you want to go against God your whole life, you can do that. He'll let you. But what makes you think ignoring or alienating or directly confronting God your whole life, what makes you think at the end of life, suddenly you're going to want to be with him and he's going to want you to be with him? You know, if you don't want him in this life, you don't get him in the next. It's that clear. So you get to choose. And if you're a guy that likes to be on the side of, a good bet, live your whole life without God, and you find out at the end there is a God, but you blew it. You're now eternally gone. That's a bad bet. Let's go the other way. Let's pretend there could be a God, and you live your life pursuing the knowledge of that God. And at the end of life, you find out he's real. And he says, no, I saw you trying to find me, and I saw you searching for me, and I saw you doing your best to live a good life. And now you will have this reward, and it will be forever. That's a good bet. You know, why would you bet against eternity? That's crazy.
And I like this part where Father Reehil shares a story about a guy named Howard Storm, who was an atheist but later became a pastor after Jesus told him, "This is your final chance. If you want to be with me, you have to change your life. Check this out."
But for those people who want to see it, I think one of the most influential videos I've ever watched is a man named Howard Storm, S-T-O-R-M. He was an art professor, I think in Ohio. He was an atheist, self-professed atheist. And he also said he never did anything bad. He never cheated on his taxes. He didn't cheat on his wife. He didn't kick the dog, just didn't believe in God. He took a group of students to Paris for an art exhibit, and he died while he was in Paris. And he remembers exactly what happened. The whole thing is 100% clear. He suddenly came out of his body. He went up to this place. He saw light this way, but there was a darkness this way. And these people came, he called them people, and they kind of took him and started leading him towards this way away from the light. And at first they were fairly polite, or at least they weren't rude. And the further they got into the darkness, the more they started abusing him, until they were ripping his flesh off his body and doing horrible things to him that when he recounts the story, he's physically very emotional because he's almost reliving it. And he says he got stuck. He finally got placed in this pit in the bottom of this abyss, and then they left him alone. And he says the desolation is so overwhelming of being alone and not having the presence of God, where you feel nothing but desolation, that he wanted the demons to come back and continue to abuse him because it was better than the desolation he felt. And he tried to think of a prayer. He knew no prayers because he didn't know. He was like, the Pledge of Allegiance is coming to his mind. He knew nothing. And then he finally just said, Jesus, help me. And this light comes down into the pit and pulls him out and takes him to a place. He says it wasn't heaven, but it wasn't hell. And Jesus said, he had a nun take one of his art classes. And when she came in that day in her habit, he said, you can take the class, but if you mention his name, you're out. And the nun knew immediately, oh, I'm really here to pray for him. And Jesus said, because of her prayers, I'm going to send you back. This is your final chance. If you want to be with me, you have to change your life. So he did come back in his body. And it was a very long, it was like 20 minutes with a toe tag. And then he got up and told his wife everything that happened. And he quit his job and he became a pastor. And all he does is preach the truth of Jesus and his great mercy, but also the devil is real. And I think if you don't believe, at least watch that and ask the Holy Spirit to enlighten your heart. I think people will come around to it.
For the next few clips, I'd like to share something from Father Carlos Martins. The first is him clarifying what it really means demon is inside somebody.
When we say a demon is inside somebody, he's not literally inside, because that would imply that he is contained within a body, right? That the body would somehow limit him, and that's not the case. What we mean by that is that the demon has somehow gained a legal jurisdiction to manipulate this body, to manipulate this person, to push his or her consciousness aside and begin inhabiting, right? That's what we're saying. A demon is, angels were created with incredible intellects, right? They are not limited by any physicality. So they don't learn the way that we learn. They learn, all the knowledge they have is gained through intuition. So we have to reason things out, right? We'll take two pieces of information, and if they are connected, we can deduce using syllogistic thinking, using reasoning, we can derive a conclusion. They don't have to engage in that process. Whatever they have, whatever information they possess, or whatever information that we normally would need to calculate, they have instantly at their disposal. So when we look at a clear blue sky in the summer, we see immediately the sky is blue. We don't have to reason that it's blue. It's immediate to us. Angels have all of their knowledge in this manner.
Secondly, languages. It seems these demons know a lot of languages, and we've seen that acted out in movies as well.
Legionum mihi nomen est, quia multi sumus. My name is Legion, for we are many.
Ego sum qui intrus habitat, potas me expellere sacerdos.
And so the question is, does every demon just know every human language?
They are not limited. They are not limited like you and I are, right? So they pick up a language just by the language being used. They have an intellect that is absolutely astounding. Astounding. They require no time to learn stuff like we do, right? They exist outside of time. This is the hardest part for people to understand about the nature of demons. They are outside of space and time. So we are wired to understand all of reality within space and time.
And now here, I'd like to share something from both Father Martins and Father John Shada about body and soul. Father Sada's explanation came about when he was answering questions about aliens. I'll share a couple of short clips on that later in this video, and in fact, Father Rehill also has something to say about it as well.
We talk about extraterrestrial intelligence. Okay. We have a couple of different things that are involved in. For example, what distinguishes human beings from any other form of life on Earth? Well, believe it or not, the soul is the essence of a living thing. In other words, all living things have souls. A plant has a soul, an animal has a soul, okay? The difference is that human beings have immortal souls, souls that will not die. Living things, other than human beings, their soul dies when they die, right? For us as human beings, then, we have an immortal soul, and that's what's important. In other words, there's no real problem with the idea of life on other planets, right? Because all living things have souls, right? But we're talking about a different kind of animal when we talk about human beings, because the thing that differentiates us in this sense, then, is the idea of self-consciousness, self-awareness. Animals, even though they have souls, they're not self-conscious, which is the reason why, your dog sees its reflection in the mirror and starts barking because it thinks it's another dog. It doesn't realize that it's a reflection of itself. And human beings are the only creatures on Earth that can do that. And that differentiates us from animals. So on the one hand, we can say, okay, so could there be life on other planets? Sure. I don't have any problem with that at all. But the question becomes, is this form of life capable of self-consciousness? Are they really intelligent in that sense of the word? all kinds of animals are very intelligent. Our dogs, our cats, our elephants are highly intelligent creatures, right? But they're not intelligent in the sense that human beings are intelligent. There's a real distinction between those, right? So I think those are very, very important considerations to take into account when we're talking about, life on other planets, so to speak.
And here's what Father Carlos Martins said about body and soul. I'm putting this clip here side by side with Father Sada's explanation so that hopefully it is helpful for you to compare the two explanations.
The thing to understand is if a demon is present in somebody, they may not be possessed. There's different grades of demonic hold that people can get themselves in. But what we're talking about is within a body, within an individual, that there is now a spirit that is not their own, that is present alongside theirs. And in order to understand the dynamic here, we need to understand what a human being is. A human being is not a body and a soul. It's not a body with a soul within it. We are bodies who are souls. We are ensouled bodies, if you will. So it was never in God's plan for there to be a separation between the body and the soul that occurs at death. That was never part of God's plan. And so we are in integration. There is no point, there's no dividing line between where your body ends and your soul begins. Right? That would be a fake artificial distinction. When you die, there is that separation, and it's definitive. We can see. We look at a dead body. This person is not here any longer. This is the shell of who they were. So when a spirit is present, he doesn't replace the soul of the person, but he can take over the animation of the body. And this is part of the mystery of God's creation. He created humans to be capable of possessing more than one spirit inside them, right? To be capable. This, in a sense, it's not surprising. Paul, in his epistles, identifies over and over again how we are members of Christ's body. We are limbs on the body of Christ. We're body parts on that body. And so what that means is Christ's spirit enters into us. And his spirit is exactly what we receive at baptism. We receive the same spirit of Christ. The spirit of God enters into us. That spirit is what makes us holy. That spirit is what generates within us the good actions that we're called to do. That spirit leads us, it guides us, it counsels us, it informs us, teaches us, and so forth. But it is possible for an evil spirit to enter inside us. It's possible. And even if he's not inside us, he can be around us.
As you know, whenever we speak of the 7 deadly sins, it's very easy for us to bring up Wall Street and Hollywood as examples time and again. But is it true? Is Wall Street really demonic? Well, for one, I love this answer provided by Father Rigel here. Check this out.
I didn't see any kind of manifestations like I see in my work now, but you can definitely see the full operation of the 7 capital sins for sure, in overdrive. The gluttony, the lust, the envy, all of it, it's all fully present. But I didn't see I didn't see people who with their eyes would go black and they would speak in foreign languages. I didn't see that. I have a theory. I think if you're doing a lot of good work for the devil, he kind of leaves you alone. Think about Hollywood. These people, if you're promoting sin and all the 7 capital vices, then why would the devil shut you down? You're working for him.
If you've been following Father Carlos Martins before, you know he talks a lot about the Treasures of the Church, which is a ministry of evangelization of the Catholic Church. And the purpose of the ministry is to give people an experience of the living God through an encounter with the relics of his saints in the form of an exposition. Each exposition begins with a multimedia presentation on the Church's use of relic, leading to a renewal of the Catholic faith for many people. After the teaching, those in attendance have an opportunity to venerate the relic of some of their favorite saints. And in one particular interview, Father Martins even said that relics are more holy than holy water. And here's why.
Who is your nemesis in heaven? Who is in heaven whom you particularly hate? Now, the demons never want to answer those questions, so it will take work, it will take prayer, it'll take combating to get that information out. But when I have those pieces of information, I have a lot, right? So I can address him by his name. If I know for what purpose he was created, that gives me knowledge as to his makeup. So he rejected that job by the Lord. He is constantly rejecting his duty. So I'm going to look for a saint who fulfills that duty. And who's your nemesis in heaven? Well, he's telling me which saint he particularly despises and hates. And so I will immediately obtain a relic of that saint. I'll go fetch it from my office. If I don't have it, then I will immediately try to obtain it because they are visceral against them. They produce a visceral, painful reaction. In terms of the level of holiness, a relic is just much more holy than holy water. Why? A holy water is what we in the church, we would call a sacramental. It's an object that has become holy through the action of the church. A relic has not become holy in that manner. It is holy simply by being attached to a saint who is a member of the body of Christ. So we're talking about two different realities, and one is higher than the other. You will always get farther with a relic than with a sacramental. That is my experience.
Well, as I promised earlier that I'll share the audio clip of Father Sada addressing extraterrestrial life. And here you go, and I've got to admit, he did raise a few reasonable questions to begin with.
Well, first of all, even the very idea of genuine space travel is a relatively new phenomenon in human history, right? So I don't think it was a subject that ever seriously came up, all right, first of all. So second of all, I remember in the seminary even, believe it or not, in one of our classes, the question was actually raised, right? But we're dealing with something that we have absolutely no real evidence for, and so we really don't have any genuine theological material to think about, to really work with, to really deal with. So I think that's important. So let's say we're talking about these experiences with these extraterrestrial beings, supposedly, flying saucers and all that kind of stuff, right? And I will confess to having seen those kinds of things myself, right? The unexplainable aerial phenomenon, I have seen them years ago in my own experience. So the first question I would ask myself is, if these creatures are so super intelligent that they are capable of interstellar travel, all right, you're talking about a kind of technology that has to be super advanced, way beyond anything that we can even begin to imagine, right? Because there's certainly no, planets close by to us that would be, inhabitable in that sense, in any sense, really. First of all, what would they want here? What would they be doing here? What's their whole point of coming here if they are so super intelligent that they are capable of interstellar travel? So I think that, that's a question I think that has to be asked. Why are they here? What would they want? Why would they even bother? It doesn't. You really think about it logically, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So that leads then to the other side of the coin then, is it possible then that these experiences are not really experiences of extraterrestrial intelligence, but might in fact be demonic lies, illusions, if you will, or tricks that demons would play on us? And the interesting thing about it is, the Lord himself said to us in scripture that if he comes back, there's going to be these signs in the stars and in the skies. I have a gut feeling, not a scientific or a theological, but I have a gut feeling that many of the experiences that people are having are actually experiences of the demonic, as opposed to some kind of super intelligent extraterrestrial beings. And that leaves me open. And certainly I have no problem with, is there possible life on other planet, like, even intelligent life, maybe. But, it leads us to other issues, I think, as well. So, but I suspect that what most people are experiencing is actually demonic delusions and not real extraterrestrial intelligence.
But even with that said, Father Sada also pointed out the possibility of demonic tricks when it comes to these aliens.
I think there's a couple of problems, so to speak. For example, when you're talking about demonic oppression or possession on Earth, first of all, you're dealing with something in which human beings would have done something that opened the door to some sort of demonic influence, either from the outside or from the inside. But when we're talking about these kinds of phenomena, I think it's just demonic tricks, if you will, in order to prey upon human imagination, to prey upon the weakness of human faith, all right, to prey upon so many of our own weaknesses that they will try to appear in other forms, rather than attacking us individually. And so I think that, there's a real distinction between the two, all right? While, there are certain characteristics that seem to be in common between them, I think there's also some real serious distinctions between them as well.
And interestingly enough, what Father Sada said there is quite similar to what Father Rehill is going to say here.
We have been setting this up for 50 years with all the Star Wars and Star Trek and all these extraterrestrial films, right? TV series. So basically Americans at this point think, well, yeah, we've already been watching this for 50 years. Of course it's real. When and if these things come, here's what I predict. They're going to be far beyond us in intelligence. And they're going to say, we have been where you are. We understand what you're going through. You have all these trials in life. We have reached perfection. And we're here to tell you that Jesus was not God. The universe is God. And you have to come with us to worship in order to unlock the secrets of the universe. It's going to be along these lines. It's going to try to get people away from formal religion and into the universe religion. And people will do it because they'll say, look, this clearly they're flying these machines that are so advanced. They have to be telling the truth. But I think they're demons. They're impersonating aliens, but it's a demon. You would think in the creation account there would be some note if there was a significant intelligent life that we don't know about in the story, and there isn't. But the Catechism of the Catholic Church, paragraph 356, says this: of all visible creatures, only man is able to know and love his creator. He's the only creature on earth that God has willed for its own sake. But all visible creatures, only man is able to know and love his creator, which means rational, able to have a will and an intellect. Clearly, an alien that builds a spaceship would have to have an intellect and a will, so that would kind of rule that out. But it would still be open for it to be a demon. They don't have corporal bodies, but they can inhabit and look like they do.
But in any case, if somehow it's true in regards to these aliens, would this cause a crisis of faith, or will it cause a sort of revival and essentially drive people back to religious traditions for guidance? Well, here's something from Father Sada in regards to this question.
As has been said recently many times in different sources, we have probably the least well-catechized generation of Catholics in the history of the Church. And as a result of which, I think people are so far gone already in terms of the loss of faith that I think that they would end up probably going off the deep end the other way. I think people would just simply give up on faith altogether because they're already halfway there anyway. And they would probably come up with some new religion, they would invent some, God from the stars sort of thing, which a lot of them have already started doing anyway, So I think people are already doing that. And I think that if it was proven that there were these intelligent beings from other planets, that would only accelerate that process, which would only be the trap into which we would fall.
If you are still here watching this video, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I'm so sorry for taking too much of your time, but I'll just share 3 more very helpful clips with you. The first will be from Father Martins again, as he shares a story about the Lutheran pastor who was surprised that the demon listened to Father Martins instead of him, and according to Father Martins, probably one of the reasons why the pastor later became a Catholic.
With regard to the devil, I think what has to be kept in mind is the fact that for 2,000 years, the Christian Church and I'm going to say specifically the Catholic Church, is they are seen as the authorities in the area of exorcism. Right? The devil doesn't just appear to Christians. He doesn't just manifest himself in those who believe in Jesus, but he afflicts humanity. And all religions bring their people to Catholic priests for exorcism. They don't only do that. And it isn't the case that only a Catholic priest can get rid of the devil. But even among Christian denominations, Catholics are seen as the authority. The devil responds to the priesthood and to the prayers of the priest. And I remember one time, when I was working as an exorcist at that time, and I had been for maybe 2 years or so. And there was a pastor of a Lutheran church who contacted me and asked if he could send one of his parishioners, a member of his congregation, to me because he was certain that this person was demonically possessed. And I said, you are most welcome to do so, but when the person comes, I want you to come as well. I don't know that individual, you do, and I'd like to have you just in the room. And that's kind of standard that I do. I always want somebody either from the family or if it's a pastor that is recommending the person, I want that pastor in the room as well, because he's on hand to fill me in on things that I might need filling in on. And so as I was beginning to pray, I put on an alb, which is a white garment symbolizing baptism that we do, and I put on a cincture, which is a rope by which we tie that alb, and I'm putting on a stole, which is a garment. I have one here in front of me, just a purple or white, what have you, but in exorcism we use the purple side that you put around your neck. It symbolizes the authority of Christ's priesthood. And I could tell in looking at his face that he thought that this was a bit much. Like, why in heaven's name do you have to do this? Doesn't the prayer itself just suffice? And so I just continued doing what I was doing. And then as I was finishing dressing, the demon blurted out, "Do you think any of that is going to help you?" And I said, "Be silent, demon." And he was silent. And the pastor chimed in and he said, "I have said that to him so many times, and he has never obeyed." And so he himself in that moment was struck with something, that there's a power in the priesthood against the demonic. 2 years later, he joined the Catholic Church.
And to follow this up as well, as this video is originally meant to be a guide to exorcisms for new subscribers here, I think this clip here where Father Martins explains about his process will be very useful.
So, skepticism. Every exorcist, if he's worth anything, is skeptical by nature. You have to be skeptical because exorcism itself, the state of being, well, exorcism is an illness. Right? It's a spiritual illness. But it can resemble very much mental illness. And frankly, some people in the world are just so strange, foolish, needy, that they at times will even fake demonic oppression in order to receive attention. So you have three states that can appear very similar, that can exhibit very similar symptoms to actual demonic possession, mental illness, and fakery. And so it's the job of the exorcist to find out what is going on here. And it's not just his job to identify whether the devil is here or not. We are pastors of souls. If someone has mental illness, I take it upon myself to help the person in that state. I'm not a physician. I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I can't treat the illness, but certainly I can help the person discover the illness and to receive a diagnosis from someone who is competent. And in so doing, I'm pastoring that soul. I'm giving care. I'm giving the care of Christ, the care of the church to that soul. And the same goes for somebody who is faking. I mean, will I be frustrated if I encounter somebody like that? Well, absolutely. But this person has his or her own illness, and if the person is helpable, I want to help the person coming out to come out of that state. So skepticism is our bread and butter, and we never take it as a given that someone who comes forward stating, I need the ministry of exorcism, that person is in fact possessed, right? We assume that the symptoms and the phenomena are rooted in natural causes. We make that as the default, but at the same time, and this is a mistake that I think many exorcists have made, it is entirely possible, and in fact common, for someone who is demonically possessed to also have mental illness. So these are not mutually exclusive states. What you want to determine is the symptoms that are afflicting this person now, the symptoms that have brought the individual into your office and they're sitting here in front of you. What is the cause of those? And so that is the diagnosis is what occupies most of our time. And we have different tests for that. But certainly you never only do psychological testing. You never only do medical analysis, right? The priest, the exorcist, is not a referral service. If somebody comes to the church and is asking for prayer, well, the first thing we do is not send them away to go to some other professional. That would be a scandalous thing to do. Somebody's is coming to you for help. Well, you help them. So I always will pray with such a person. Now, that person may exhibit demonic symptoms immediately. If there is a demon there, when somebody is praying, exorcist or not, if somebody has the faith of Jesus Christ and is praying, that prayer is repulsive to the demon. It is demon kryptonite, if we can speak that way. It causes him pain, and so he's going to react. He may react he may react in a manner that is visible to me. He may not. He may react in a manner that is only visible or only sensed, if you will, by the victim in front of me seeking help. But there's going to be some kind of reaction. There may be no reaction. And if there's no reaction at this point, the probability is going to be very high and increasing by the second that the heart of the problem here is mental illness. Because when I pray, I am praying specifically against anything demonic. And if there's no reaction whatsoever, even internally to the person, so when I'm done praying, I will always ask, as I was praying, did you see anything, hear anything, feel anything? And I will specify that. Was there any pain in your hands, in your throat, in your stomach? Was there any agitation in you? Were there any memories that came up? Any dark, ugly images that came in your mind? Where I rested my hand on your head as I was praying, is there pain there? Did my hand feel extraordinarily heavy? I will make specifications like that, and I'll let them tell me what they experience. So that's the beginning of a diagnosis. Someone has a demon within them. You will employ psychology. You will employ medical staff, because again, they are not mutually exclusive, and there can be a condition in the state of somebody who is possessed that you need to be aware of, that if you're not aware of, that medically it can be a liability to them. It can wound them, and if you're not aware of it, you're not helping them.
As for the last part of this video, I'd like to make this as the last one because, for one, it's a very good reminder for us all, especially these days when our society is certainly becoming more narcissistic.
When things go really well and when people are winning, they always take the credit. Occasionally at an awards thing, somebody go, oh, I thank God too, but look what I did. And when things go bad and things aren't working, they blame God. It should be the reverse. Things are going really well, give him the credit. And when things are falling apart, say, we've sinned, Lord, have mercy on us. That should be the response. So if you're having a tough time, turn to Jesus and just say, I think I've made a mess of this. Please help me out of it. I want you to be in my life. He will come in 100%. There's never been a single person that went to him for help that he said no, if they were authentically looking for his help.
Why don't you go to church?
I don't know.
Well then, that is all for the video this time. Thank you so much to all of you for taking the time to be here with us. I sincerely hope you've learned a lot from this video, and if there's any feedback or suggestion, please don't hesitate to let me know down in the comments below. But before that, please allow me share this fun fact about the movie E.T. from Father Sada. Check this out.
I wonder how many people realized that that whole movie was a Christ movie, that the figure of E.T. was the figure of Christ. And, you can go through piece after piece after piece, and you can figure out, coming from the stable, coming from, the healing, the Sacred Heart, the death and resurrection, the whole thing's the Christ story. So it's good that people can look at it from that perspective as well. I think there's something else too, and you have to keep this in mind.
Anyway, for those of you who'd like to support our works, I left the link to our PayPal donation down in the description box below. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for your continuous support, contribution, and prayer. I'm sorry I couldn't release video every day for the past few weeks because sometimes I needed a little bit more time to listen to all these lectures and interviews. For this video alone, I've listened to over 6 hours of interviews, and I have to listen to it over and over again to identify which part of the interview that I'd like to include in the video. So sometimes it takes a while for me to go through all of that. Well then, until the next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and God be with you.